Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grev, and welcome to episode 13 of the Rip Roaring Reds podcast. Tonight, myself and my co-host Jace are going to be discussing Arsenal versus Manchester United. But before we get into that, I want to know, how are you, Jace? How's your evening?
You know how my evening is. I just told you, and it sounds horrendous, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm having a good week, just working very hard. And yeah, I can't complain. Life is good. So yeah, I'm all right. How about you? How's your week going?
Before we do that, though, I want you to bring out your joke just so you can say it again, because it was good, and I want the audience to hear it. So just let's do that first.
What, that I shaved my head so I can't pull it out anymore?
Correct. I loved it. I loved it. It's my favorite. Yeah, my week's been good. Back to work, obviously, after the holiday, which I've not necessarily been super looking forward to. But it's been fine. The weather here is unreal. I've obviously brought it back from Spain with me. It's actually too hot. Yeah, exactly. So if we start looking more tomato-ish over the course of this video, you'll know why. It's probably about 30 degrees in this room. Yeah, so all good. Right. I tell you what, it's going to be a massive episode, this one, because we're going to be going in on Manchester United. We're going to be talking a lot about the Arsenal and the massive result that this is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that intro music out of the way, and then we're going to get straight into it.
Saka. Saka! That is a diamond of a goal! It's Bergkamp. That's magnificent!
This is my club. Fucking love this football club.
Henry. What a goal! Gabriel Martinelli! He's scoring for Arsenal!
We said on the last podcast that ending bit with Martinelli scoring, he didn't score in this game. What an unfortunate. We tried to manifest it, Jason. It just didn't happen. Right. Let's get into the bit that we always start the show with. It's a big rip roaring review. I'm going to hand over to you first. We're actually going to talk about the same subject. We're both dead excited about it, though. Go on, Jace. What is your rip roaring review this week?
Ten Hag's a massive crybaby, isn't he? I mean, it. We're going to go into the game in more detail, but I found it was particularly called out some of the comments that he made at the end of the game on free. Like, I just don't see his perspective. Yeah, I've got Arsenal bias tinted lenses on, but he said, here's the quote. Let's start. This is a quote from Ten Hag. Let's start with the penalty given but rejected. Not get booked for it. Then, so basically saying that the penalty was rejected from Arsenal and Havertz didn't get booked for it. Then the foul on Højlund in the penalty area, no foul given, not even by VAR. Then there's a disallowed goal from Garnacho. I think that he said he thinks it's the wrong angle. Finally, the goal that they gave, they said it was a clear foul on Johnny Evans when Rice's shot went in. I fundamentally just feel like that's sour grapes. I mean, Arsenal fans, we all think it was a foul on Havertz. I don't know how the penalty got reverted. We were screaming at the television, me and Spence. I don't know what it was like for you in the ground. In regards to the Højlund incident, for me, like, I watched a couple of ref reviews on it. Not that you can always trust the ref reviews on Sky Sports and whatnot, because you just can't. But I kind of agree. Like, Gabriel's using his strength, so like, welcome to the Premier League, son. Get on the weights. That's the way I see it. I know I'm biased. I know people will disagree with me. And then the foul on Johnny Evans. No way. You see that? Like.
You'd be given the other way, right? Surely.
Yeah, like, it was a massive foul on Gabriel. Like, he's like pulls into the ground.
Thrown into the ground. Yeah.
Sorry, we're on YouTube as well, so I'm like showing a video of how he thrown him. But for people listening, I'm trying to enact Johnny Evans throwing Gabriel to the ground. Either way, if that goal hadn't gone in, it would have been a penalty to us. So I completely disagree. I think it's sour grapes. they lost the game. I think we'll go on to stats and things later and look at it. And we were frustrated in the second half because we had chances to put the game to bed and we didn't. And then they came back into it with like kind of classic defensive performance and maybe get a goal in the last few minutes. Just on the VAR as well for the Garnacho offside. Draw the angles on the pitch. I don't know if you saw it, Grev, though, on Twitter. Like the guy drew the angles with like a bit of Photoshop software. It's like that's a bang on. That decision was actually genuinely the right decision. It was not wrong. Like the angle was dead on. If you look at the proportions and the angle of the pitch and the way that the lines were moving, it was the right call. So yeah, Anyway, sour grapes and Ten Hag. How about you? Where do you want to go in on Man United?
Where to start? For me, there's two ways I want to look at it. So Ten Hag has assembled one of the most expensively assembled squads in the league over the past 2 years. He spent over 350 million quid on his players, right? So we're talking Anthony, Højlund, Casemiro, Mount, Martinez, Onana, Malacia, Ericsson. Granted, a few of these are injured, but these are his players, right? And, if this was Arteta, people would be calling for his head. This would be everyone going, he spent this much money. He didn't win the league last year. What is he doing? I find it unreal that we are in a situation where no one is going in on Ten Hag and on Man United. Through that assembled squad, you would have anticipated in a game of this magnitude against a club like Arsenal that they would set up in such a way that is in suiting with the players that they've signed. They have, and this is bias out the door, right? They have an enormity of attacking talent. They have really good players. Marcus Rashford, unreal, great finisher, can do a lot of damage, and we've seen it in all the games we keep playing against them. He seems to always turn up. They have Anthony can play. I don't think he's their strongest player by any means, but he can play. Martial, Casemiro, these are not bad players, right? So they should be facing us with an attacking mindset. And what they did was play the same game plan they played last time. Let's wait for Arsenal to have the ball and let's counter-attack them. And it worked once and it didn't work again. And it was effectively just very boring, very docile. And I just can't get on board with the fact that they've spent that level of money for that level of squad and to turn up at our ground and perform the way that they did. I just can't understand it.
It's interesting. I think you have I think a lot of people, if it was Arteta in that situation, would be calling for his head. You're right. With Ten Hag, I think he's still. I think I said this before on a previous podcast. Like I would give him time, like we gave Arteta time. It takes time. It doesn't matter. You can spend £2 billion, £3 billion.
Look at Chelsea.
Yeah, exactly right. And in one season, you're not going to see the transformation. So Man United have shown improvement in the same way Arsenal showed improvement in the early stages. So, you can spend, you can chuck unlimited cash at the problem. It takes time. You can't escalate the process.
I get money. That. I do get that. But there is a point to be made here that I do feel that where they've spent the money is not necessarily what they need. They look at their centre. I know that obviously had injury, and I know that's not their fault to Varane. They ended up on the pitch with Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans as their centre-back pairing. That is an embarrassment. And absolutely, it is funny, but it is an embarrassment. And it cost them. And I think you even said it, like Ten Hag might have thrown other players under the bus. He threw them under the bus as well. You would never find Arteta doing that. He was always like, I want to get my arms around the players, right? That's what he always does. And Ten Hag did the opposite.
And this is one of the reasons why I was mentioning also about his sour grapes, because this is the difference. Like I don't really care about Ten Hag, to be transparent. I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm behind Arteta, but I sympathise with the fact that you need to give your manager time and get behind them, which is what I still think United need to do with Ten Hag. On the other hand, let's look at the behaviours of comparing two managers here. The behaviours of Arteta, the way he talks in the press, the way he talks about his players, the way he even talks about fellow teams. Like he's always respectful. Ten Hag, he just went in on Arsenal a few times. Like last year, it's like, oh, they didn't get any injuries. Oh, hang on, we got a load of injuries and lost the league. What are you talking about? That's like the way he criticizes other clubs, just that whole general element of it and the way he's going in on his players. Yeah, I kind of agree with that part. I think the money bit, I definitely find it hilarious how much they're spending. Because I think that there's an article that the Swiss-based research institute of kind of looked at how much teams, especially in the Premier League, have been spending, and Man United are just like top, I think now, a record 1.19 billion. I've spent more 1.19 billion more on transfers than over the past decade than they've recouped through player sales, according to a new study. They're like number one, like even more than City. So because City might buy a lot, but they can also sell. United can't.
I mean,
so
pot kettle from us though, Jace, right?
Oh yeah. But we don't. I mean, the most expensive player that we bought that was a failure was Pepe. I mean, obviously Havertz and Rice are now in that zone, but United have got a much more proven track record at that than we have. Like I remember Martial was one of their most expensive signings. I wouldn't say he's been in some massive success. Pogba, Lukaku, Maguire, like these are all 80 million pound players. So yeah, I think I don't actually blame Ten Hag for them, and that's why I'm also sympathetic to Ten Hag in that situation, because I don't think necessarily he's making those decisions. I think that's above his head.
But we're all here for it, though, right, Jace? We're all enjoying the ride.
Yeah, and one thing, just last thing I'll say on it, Sancho, like in the moment, like let's have him. Man United, I will give you £20 million right now for Jadon Sancho, because I guarantee you, Arteta will turn him into another Bukayo Saka. You saw what he did with wingers at Man City, Arteta when he was assistant to Sane, to Sterling, how much they talk about him. That kind of player, he is a specialist in. It's why Martinelli and Bukayo Saka are where they are. I think Sancho, if he'd come back to Premier League and gone back to City, he'd have been absolutely fine. He'd been one of the best wingers in the world still. I think the fact that he's gone to Man United and not had the nurturing and the development that he probably requires, and the style of football that United play, it's just the wrong fit, wrong club, wrong fit. Coaches coming in and out. I guarantee if he goes to United, if he goes to Arsenal, maybe if he goes to Liverpool, you will see he's an amazing player. He's wasted there.
I mean, you never know. They might sell Salah for 215 million, so Liverpool might be in need of a winger.
Maybe. But yeah, I saw the comments he also made on like Sancho being left out. I was just like, you're mistreating, you're doing something wrong with that player. And maybe it's the player's attitude because he's so down, because he's not getting the game time and his career's gone downhill. But he needs to be treated in a way that, and sometimes players aren't motivated by being negatively called out in the press. Sometimes they just need an arm around the shoulder. He's not given that at the moment, that's clear.
Right, so our first section wasn't called the Ripping into Manchester United review, but it might have felt like it. 13 minutes of great content. Let's move on, because otherwise we could spend the entire podcast talking about that. Let's talk about Arsenal's setup for this game and their tactical masterclass. There's a lot of stats that you just said at the top of the show there, Jason, that you want to call back to, and a lot of kind of things. Do you want to talk me through those statistics and what they tell us about Arsenal's performance within this game?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go into some of let's just look at expected goals first of all. It's massively different. United played a very defensive game. They sat deep to an extent. They wanted us to press, and usually we're quite a pressing team. We didn't press. Like, Onana had the ball at his feet, and they were raving about how Onana can play with his feet. And it's like, yeah, but we're not stupid, because we know how good he is with his feet. So if we press him, our players move forward. He finds the gap, United counter-attack. So yeah, you can make him look amazing with his feet. He's going to have the ball there, but there's a reason why we're playing the way we're playing, because United are playing defensive, and we don't want to make ourselves vulnerable through a counter-attack where they break through. So I found that kind of whole play quite interesting. And I think that is reflected in the expected goals, because when we are attacking, our expected goals was 2.27. United, they didn't come forward that much, 0.94 on expected goals, and expected assists again were double, 1.18 to to 0.64. So I think when you just start to look at some of those statistics, it kind of tells that story of how they came set up to play. And I think Arsenal actually knew how they were going to come and set up to play. And we kind of counteracted that. Man United, I reckon, had much more possession than they thought they were going to get.
The first half,
again,
I think they had something like 60% or something like that. It was significantly
Yeah.
higher than ours.
Yeah, it was. And I think that was kind of partly intentional. The thing for us personally, I think, is it was more frustrating in the second half when we should have had the game put to bed. Few different chances, especially the Havertz miss in the first half, for example. That was
Saka one straight at Onana in the second half is probably the biggest one for me.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Was
Sorry to open up an old wound.
No, it was yeah. But we had like a total of 17 shots and 5 on target. Their shots were 10 and 2 on target. So yeah, like the stats kind of bring it home there. I think we were far superior, even if maybe the neutral watching the game or a United fan watching the game probably has a differing opinion. I think consistently, if you look at the stats this year, we have been on the positive side of where we want to be. And the only time the result didn't come through was Fulham. But Arteta was like, it's coming. Like, he's seeing the marginal gains that you were talking about in earlier podcasts that he wants to see. He's not worried about the result. We are all obviously, of course, are worried about the result. We want to win. But we talked about process and development and transformation before. It takes time. And you're looking for certain signs of progress. And those are the signs of progress he's looking for. You're going to have small setbacks on the way. You're going to get draws. You're going to get a couple of defeats. So, yeah, that's my perspective on it. Tell me about, from your perspective, on the tactical masterclass.
Yeah, you made you made some like amazing points there. So I'd like to maybe piggyback a little bit on them, but like you did make some really good points. Like for me, I looked at some of the stats, some of the big telling ones for me. Like Man United didn't spend any time in our final third. They spent about 14% of their time in the final third. And in there, I don't have it in front of me, but there was a stat that talks about how many final third passes they made, and it was about a third of ours. That shows in that XG and that XA, like basically they just weren't creating anything. So like you say, we were allowing them to have the ball. We set up in a very different way to this game. Like last year when we played against them, we set up in the way that we usually would and would press, and we would get countered and transitioned. Actually, their only goal from Rashford came from our own mistake. It wasn't through...
Yeah. No, sorry.
Havertz gave the ball away to Eriksen, I think, in a loose pass, and that's how they scored their goal. If you look at they had 2 shots on target that entire game. Their XG was just under 1, which is basically Rashford's attempt. Rashford's attempt is that 0.94 in their XG. I can't remember who the second shot was, but they didn't create anything, and that's not necessarily just because of how defensive we maybe set up and made it difficult for them. We allowed them to play in their own third, and we just let them have the ball, knowing that they weren't really being able to do very much with it if we weren't allowing the space in the middle. And that is, like, for me, like I say, we talked a lot earlier on in preseason about last season, where Arteta never had a plan B. He always had plan A, and that's how he would play. And if teams set up against us with the low block that we've discussed in many pods before, what would we do? I'm now seeing a very kind of different approach to games, which I think is, like you say, that process, that growth, that transformation, it is happening. The stats, and maybe it's not translating as much as to the, like you say, to the casual viewer or someone that's a neutral that wants to watch it because I think our first goal in particular was the first one-touch football we've seen us play for a while.
Yeah.
You turn it on. I can't remember. Well, yeah, but there was maybe like 8 passes or something. Like, it's very reminiscent of some of our goals of old. Everyone calls back to the old Jack Wilshere Norwich goal. There was a Giroud one very, very similar to that as well. That one-touch passing football that we usually commonly associated with. And I'll tell you just one other thing I was going to call out on the tactical kind of part of the game. when they were coming out of the tunnel, because I watched the highlights back after coming back from the game, and you just saw the players coming out, and there was like a real big size difference between Arsenal and Manchester United. They feel very small by comparison, and the amount of it felt like we were targeting corners because we had a lot of corners this game, particularly in the first half. Every time Onana was in the corner of his area, we were pressing him, knowing that he couldn't get out when we could sense there was an opportunity. And we had like 12 corners or something in the first half. I think I don't think I've got. We had 12 corners the entire game, so I think it's about 7 or 8 in the first half, and we just kept on that because we knew we had the height advantage, and you could tell. Like I would say the Rice goal was straight off the training ground. To me, it felt like something we'd worked on because a lot of man marking in that center in the tall players, and Rice he had so much time. Unreal. Yeah. Anyway, I think tactically we just set up amazing. I think it was such a great way to set up for that game in particular.
I think just to add to it, like so one, the Rashford chance that you mentioned about, like me and Spence just like I don't know. I watched the game with my friend and Grev's friend Spence. And so when Rashford got the ball, I think there was both a sinking feeling. We were like, oh crap, like it's a counter. This is the biggest threat United have is Rashford on the counter. That's it. And it was like, he's going to score this. It was the same way that when Spurs used to get on the counter with Son, I always used to feel he was going to score and put it in the bottom corner, whip it with his foot, and he always did. And it was exactly the same with Rashford because we saw it last season. He did it again. Apart from that, to your point around how we played, we're seeing this season, we're seeing the Arsenal low block. We are implementing a different strategy. We did it against City. It worked for most of the game. And then we've done it again against United. It's our version.
It takes like a level of concentration, right? That is just, 90 minutes at that level is challenging, particularly against teams like City and United, who can unlock those blocks.
But the only thing I would probably add to that is that it's having an impact on our perspective of how we're playing. I think it's taken us time to transition because we saw the low block against City. We didn't think anything more of it because we're like, oh, right, where's the game plan for City? I didn't think we were going to... But when we season kicked off, we expected the one-touch football that we saw with the goal that, Odegaard scored, because we saw that quite a lot last year. We played that way in the first 10 games of last season, and we were on fire. We were killing games by half time. Gabriel Jesus was magic. We were scoring goals with fun. That one-touch football, those games, particularly the last 2 seasons at home, the games against Spurs of one-touch football and scoring. I used to think of like Smith Rowe coming in on the edge of the area and doing what Odegaard's done.
Cut back. Yeah.
Yep. Like that kind of football was just, that's our football. And we haven't seen it this season. And I think it's because actually it's quite clear what Arteta's been doing. He knows we can do the one touch, but it opens us up to a certain vulnerabilities in the midfield and defensively. So we're also playing a different style, which has a result. It's having an impact probably on the number of goals that we're scoring, but we're still getting the results. So it's okay. And I think that we're going to have to, the team are probably still learning when to pivot in a game between those two styles as well. It's just an observation.
I mean, there was one other question I wanted to ask you. I know we've had a bit on this segment already. Before the game, obviously, it leaked on Twitter mainly that Partey was injured, and then Ghana's Football Association obviously leaked it as well. And then he obviously was not going to start. Word is that he's out for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Do you think that we would have set up in the same way had he been fit? Would Gabriel effectively go back into the starting 11 with Zinchenko, or would we carry on with the same setup that we had in the first 3 games of the season?
I'll refer to my previous statement last podcast. No idea. Didn't know what Arteta. If Partey was fit, I had no idea what Arteta was doing. I knew the lineup I wanted, and I think Partey being injured actually forced.
Me too. I think it forced his hand into the situation everyone wanted it to be, right?
Yeah, well, we obviously wanted Partey and Rice in the midfield together. I think probably over maybe having Havertz there, but it forced him to play the formation that he wanted. And I mean, I don't know complaints.
I suppose it doesn't matter now, right? It doesn't matter. It's all history.
I think, like with an exception, Havertz's miss obviously was disappointing, but apart from that, I thought he had a really, really good game. Unless actually, did he give the pass over to Rashford? He did, didn't he?
He gave the ball away to Eriksen that resulted in the goal. It was a loose pass. I mean,
but as the rest of his performance, I thought was pretty decent. So
I think
I've
seen a lot of saying as well for him. He's getting in the right positions. I think inevitably it's going to come. He does find pockets of space. He does, the one that he kind of flashed at, and then it ended up with Saka, and I think Martinez kind of skimmed across and put it away. It will come. It's going to come.
Yeah. He's betting in still. It's all good.
Yep. Right, let's move on for tactical. Let's look at, this is called Captain Fantastic. It is going to be a little bit about Erdegaard, but also about the non-captain of this team in Declan Rice. So I'm going to go to him first. You kind of mentioned it a little bit already, but tell me, Jace, what did you think about Declan Rice in this game?
Just justifies the money we spent, right? Like it was the perfect performance from what you expect from our central midfield. I'm trying to think of the word. Let's just call him our central midfield like figurehead. What we need from our key midfield, number one midfield player, the number one on the team sheet. Was it a 10 out of 10? Maybe not, but it was a solid 8 out of 10. Like, is that familiar level? You know what you always going to get from Xhaka, no less than 7. And you just know, in some games you'd get an 8s and 9s. But he's pretty damn consistent. Rice has been pretty damn consistent the whole time, but this was definitely his best game. And he just validated the goal, topped off a wonderful performance, a controlled performance. Tactical, he clearly is understanding what Mikel wants, especially with this kind of new style that we're trying to play a little bit this season. Executed it to a T, and then gets himself his first goal, and what really probably was the winner, minus the third one we scored, but it was the one that made us all go, oh, thank God for that, Jesus Christ. Just a lovely performance. The goal was the bit that stood out for me at the end, if I'm completely honest. He was like, his performance wasn't like, there wasn't a major element of standout performance that I noticed during the game, like something that he did exceptionally well. It made him like a standout player in the game. For me, the goal was what rounded off an amazing performance. And then the reason his performance was so good, because he was quiet. We did the job he needed to do, which we have paid all that money for. And when you are a central midfielder in that position, that's what you need. That's what you are paying that money for. Because it's hard to find a midfielder that can do that.
Yeah, it's not a glamorous position, right? That's the thing. Yeah. When you're paying 105 million, everyone expects you to be buying 20 goals a season, or a lot of flair, a lot of dynamism, and that's not necessarily what we're getting from Declan Rice.
Yeah. Have you seen the articles of like, or just all the things? I've seen loads of things. It's like, which was the better signing, Jude Bellingham or Rice? Like, because like Jude Bellingham's been absolutely tearing it up from Madrid. But I think it's just because he's scoring lots of. I haven't seen the games, but I know he's scoring lots of goals. He's like scored like something like 4 or 5 in their first like 3 or 4 games. So, it's like I'm kind of like, I'm not interested in comparing them. I think they're both amazing midfielders. I think England is incredibly blessed that we've got both of them at this point in time, and I think they kind of can play slightly different positions, especially for England. Declan can play more defensive, and Jude can play more attacking. So I'm really happy. I mean, I was never worried about the amount we were spending. Havertz, yeah, of course, like everyone's going to question it. But Rice, no one's questioning it. I haven't seen it because we spent that money on Havertz. No one's even questioning how much the fact we broke our transfer record for Rice. And yeah, there's no worries. There's no concerns. A major concern is please don't get injured. Please, to God, don't.
I mean, knowing what I know about him at West Ham, he rarely ever did. That was one of the things that I think you're paying part of that money for, is the ability to play 50 games a season and not break a sweat.
Yeah. And anything for you from a Rice which was stand out? Like, is there anything except for the goal that you were like?
Yeah. I mean, the goal is the cherry. I suppose the cake and the filling within the cake for me was he's playing last season when we played our centre mid pairings. They are pairings. Rice is playing effectively a single pivot, like on his own now, and Havertz and Odegaard are playing much more fluid roles in the 10 and in the 8. And he is performing the role of two players so effectively. In this game alone, I think he made 3 50-50s in the first 20 minutes of this game. He was making every single challenge his, and his reading of the game was exemplary. He just knows things are going to happen before they do. And that was maybe not necessarily. There's one standout tackle. I think there was one that he challenged Fernandez when they were about to break, and Fernandez on the deck couldn't get up. You could have, you might look at it sometimes and say 50% of the time people are going to give it as a foul, that they didn't in this occasion, and that's he's not shying away from challenges or 50-50s. He's going to go in for them and he's winning them. That for me is what we're paying the money for, and did it so well. So yeah, I'm over the moon. And like I said, when we were looking in preseason, we were analysing some of his games that he was having. They were kind of like solid 5s and 6s out of 10s. It was like, he's ticking over. He's moving the ball. He's reading the game. It was fine. It's starting to kick on now, which is really exciting.
Yeah. I like preseason was just like, it wasn't even, because he'd only been training with the squad for like a few days in certain games. So it's kind of like, you can't read anything into that. But like, as soon as the Premier League started, like solid 7s, now we're getting 8s soon. We might get some 9 and 10s out of him. I'm sure we will.
Well, we got Spurs and City on the horizon over the next 6 games, I think. They're the ones where we're going to need those 9s. So yeah, I mean the segment's called Captain Fantastic. I don't want to move on to another one without just mentioning Odegaard. For me, the biggest thing about 36 seconds or something between the restart and our goal after their goal. If that's not a captain pulling, his socks up and dragging this team back into this game, I don't know what is. And I can't, how much did it cost us? 28 million 2 years ago?
I think it was like 35 to 40.
But
either way, it was a bargain compared to. I mean, let's be honest. There's no one in the league that is as good as Odegaard except De Bruyne in that position.
Yeah, and De Bruyne he comes in and out of games, and he is now injured, and he has had quite a lot of frailty in the recent years. He can switch it on like nobody's business. I agree, but like you say, no one else can do it other than those two.
Yeah, as I said, I think last season was the turning of the tide slightly in their in De Bruyne's crown. I think is slowly leaving as he gets older and he shows that frailty. And I think Odegaard's stepping in. The only thing I would say, like I love Odegaard when he does that. Like that exact run, he knows where to be. He knows where to put the ball. He's getting so many of those goals, as well as on top of his creativity and his assists and his finding the holes and the gaps for Saka and those through balls. Like I love him. I absolutely love him. It was a beautiful, beautiful goal and a lovely finish. But apart from that, I think he was quite quiet in the game. And I think that was, again, because of the style of football we were playing. We didn't see quite as much creativity. And I think that was a bit because we were lacking Ben driving forward a bit. And it, like, those three play together quite well. Saka, Ben White, and Odegaard alternating between the ball between them. Ben pulling out space to drag the defender wide to then create the hole that Saka runs into, that Odegaard feeds the ball. Like, it's a triangle between them, and it works exactly as I described, because Ben White is purposely not really having a much impact on the game. He's in there to pull players away, create the space for Saka, and allow Odegaard to do his magic. So, that's the only reason I think he was a bit quiet, because we were playing that defensive low block and we didn't see Ben White committing as much going forwards.
Yeah. Right. That's enough about Erdogan. God, this is such a happy podcast, Jace. It makes a lovely breath of fresh air. Right. We started with Eddie and Nketiah. We ended with Gabriel Jesus. They offered a little bit of something different between them. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. We've not discussed this yet, right, Jace, about the two kind of striker options we've got. I'm interested from your view of the game on television, how Eddie's game came across, and did anything change when Gabi Jesus made his way onto the pitch?
Again, from Eddie, brilliant performance. Like, I've learned something now in the last few games. I think I've realised is that we said Jesus doesn't have to score goals, but we actually want Eddie to score goals. But actually, I think the thing I've learned is that as long as the goals can come from other places, which again, with the style of football we've been playing a little bit, has been a bit challenging. We should hold Eddie to the same standards as Jesus, and he has been superb. Like his pressing, his chasing, his energy, he hunts down everything. And so I was really, again, impressed and happy with the performance he's putting in. He is, he's doing a great job. The difference, though, however, Jesus, was it a different style? I don't know. I think they both were doing similar things. The one difference was that the game was open at the end because Man United tried to get back into it. They left the gap, and Jesus got the assist through from Fabio. And what does he do differently? I guess I don't see Eddie quite doing what Jesus did in that situation, being able to run to the byline, commit. Was it Johnny Evans who just looked like he was sliding into the bar, straight for the bar? Go for your pint, mate. Because he wasn't interested, was he? Just slid past him, and Jesus just was that kind of ability and calmness to be able to do that in a one-on-one situation and then slot it in the corner. I love those kind of finishes. That's a classic Arsenal finish, in my opinion. That ability to slot it in the corner in that way, like we know Thierry is my favorite when he used to do it. So that was different, and I think that probably is the slight difference between Eddie and Jesus. Like the rest of the game, the Eddie's game is becoming much closer to Jesus, and what we expect: the chasing, the commitment, the pressing, the energy is being brought. But Eddie's kind of finishing much more poacher like Jesus. That's a different skill and attribute and calmness to be able to maneuver a defender and place it in the corner in that way. That's a little bit different. That's probably the major difference I can think of. What did you think of Eddie's performance?
Yeah, once again, an all-round from. It's a shame that he didn't score because it would have capped off an all-round striker performance. He did such a, like you say, chasing down, putting press, running, getting involved in the play when the game maybe wasn't coming to him in a similar vein to Gabi Jesus. Just think he made himself a nuisance. And one of the things I just love about Eddie is pressing of the keeper. How many times does he just almost get that ball? Like, and it'll result in a corner or maybe like a goal kick or something, but he does it so often, it comes off so well. That's why he does it. Like, there's some players that just kind of plod along to press the goalkeeper, knowing full well they're just not doing anything. Mesut Ozil style, you know what I mean? Where they just be like, I'm just going to stand here knowing you're going to kick it over me. I love that part. And like I said, the only difference in style that I can identify is just Eddie's the poacher. Eddie's the fox in the box. Like you say, I can't see him doing that finish that Gabi Jesus did at the end of the match. I agree with you. But that's where it's kind of interesting to have those two different styles of maybe players, and you can suit them to different games. That's why I'm like, I don't envy Arteta at this point in time, having to see who he's going to pick. Because if you were Eddie, you'd be banging on his door going, look at how I'm playing. You can't drop me. And if you're Jesus, you're going, look, I just come into that game for 20 minutes and I score a goal. You've got to start me. So it's like, what do you do? So for me, that's the difficulty we have at the moment. I mean, a nice problem to have, of course, but just something I find relatively interesting, that we've got a good amount of options, provided Jesus stays fit. He's been called up for Brazil, which does frustrate me. Arteta seemingly has just not learned the dark arts that Klopp and other managers have, where they're like, oh, he's got a niggle, he's got to stay here, got to stay.
Yeah.
We just got to do that a bit better, because we just never do. And that's where, he'll go away and he'll pick up a little knock or something, can be out for another month. We just don't need it.
Yeah, Arteta needs to give a call to Sir Alex Ferguson, doesn't he?
I know, it's just a shame that, out of all the things he has learned and that he is good at, that feels like something that doesn't need to be taught. You can just do that and just maybe he's just too honest or too transparent. I don't know, but he doesn't come across as that type of individual. Right, so Jesus was one of the substitutes that came on, and there were 3 others. I do want to talk about the cameos in this game, because they all had a big impact on this game. Out of the 3, I'll let you pick, Jace, because I'll give you the choice. Who do you want to call out first and foremost?
I'm on the Fabio train at the moment.
Of course you are. I knew you were going to go there. Just to dig
just to dig you in, yeah. But also, I mean, the obvious one, like I said, is Reece. I'll let you talk about Reece. Fabio, lovely assist. He's good. He's just growing. He's growing in front of us. We were worried in pre-season, but he is massively. I can even see the growth in 4 or 5 games. He's a different player. And the last game, home game against Fulham, he came on and owned it. Again, a great cameo, a lovely assist for Jesus. That ended the game, put it to bed thoroughly. So just really happy to see him being consistent in his performances when he is coming in off the bench, and he's pushing Havertz. Arteta's got a problem there as well, I think. If he continues to do that, there's going to be a point where he's going to have to make a decision between whether Havertz is on the bench or Fabio's on the bench. I expect Fabio to actually get some starts in the Champions League, I think, because he's got that experience at Porto. So I think I expect that.
I was going to say, because here's a question for you. So you said I can talk about Reece. Similar kind of vein. Came on, massive impact, driving at players, no fear the way that he played, creating chances for his small amount of game time. If you were encapsulating that, a real fantastic performance in trying to bring the team back into the game. And I was in it to bring it together, both him and Fabio. My view is that that's actually what they're superior at. Its impact, its last 20 minutes. And I know you're saying maybe calling for him to start, but maybe that's not the plan. Maybe the plan is to keep it like this so that we have options to transform the game when it is not in our favor. Because I get the impression that if you gave them 80 minutes, spreading that out across 80 minutes rather than in that tight space of 20, you might feel differently about their performance potentially. And that we have players now that can swap in and out and not have to worry about it so much. I don't know what you think about that. I kind of feel that having them as impact is working, and let's keep it that way.
So agree, and Reece for me, reflection was probably the most standout of all the people who had the cameo. He changed the game actually when he came on. In my opinion, the energy he brought. It only will work for so long. Yeah. What we're describing, it's not. It's.
But do you think they get told they're just like go hard for 20 minutes? Like,
yeah, of course.
So that's kind of where you say like making the biggest change. Like his energy that he brought to the rest of the team was like, we can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. But the challenge is how long are they prepared to do that? Are they prepared to do that for one more season, and they're going to knock on the door and say, I want to go if I'm not going to get the games, or are they going to be saying, you need to start me, and maybe we give them some opportunities to start, and then they have to show that same consistency for the whole 80 minutes or however long they get. Yeah. And if they can prove that, then they're owning themselves a position. But I mean, I think for us, they are much better at impacting off the bench, and Reece is especially good at that.
Yeah. I was just going to mention before we move on to the parking lot. Then Tomiyasu was the other cameo, and I would say it's probably his best performance I've seen him play since pocketing Salah back when we played Liverpool. Was his probably last best game that he had, and I think people forget how good he can be. And it has at times been very, very good. Yes, at times he has been pretty bad too. I think if you can keep up that consistency of performance, I'm not as worried if he can keep that level up in backfield. Because did he come on for Zinchenko, right?
Do you think he's better on the left than he is on the right? Because
I know he plays that for Japan, right? He plays for left on Japan. Yeah. It's a weird one. Yeah, I'm with you there because he gets roasted sometimes on the right. So maybe it's another Arteta, Jurriën Timber style because he's a right back by trade, right?
Well, we brought him in as a right back, but I'm questioning it now.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Okay, right. I tell you what. In the interest of time, let's get onto the parking lot. There's a few little bits and pieces that I added into there. As well as you. Where do you want to go first, Jason? Your parking lot. What you got to bring up?
Let's start with Eddie. Call up to the England squad. So congratulations to him. Well deserved. I'm just happy it happened because I couldn't believe it hadn't happened earlier. To be honest, there were some of the performances he was putting in last season for us in replacing Jesus.
And his numbers for the under-21s is crazy good, right?
He's the top goal scorer in under-21 history, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So, well deserved. Excited to see how he plays. I genuinely... And for me, it also adds to the Southgate, what are you doing with Ben White situation as well? Because when a team is playing very well at squad level, and they have a large amount of international players, you take all of them because they bring that vibe to the camp. We saw it with Liverpool when they were at their peak with Trent and Hendo. And we see it a little bit with Man City, but not. I guess they don't have as many. I mean, they've got Foden, they've got Grealish. I think they've got anyone. I don't think they do. They've got Stones. I guess Stones is pretty consistent. But like it's common, and I don't understand why you wouldn't bring in Ben White when you've got Saka playing right wing, when you've got Rice there, when you've got Eddie there, when you've got Aaron potentially you can play in goal. Like for me, Aaron Ramsdale, we talked better than Pickford in my opinion.
I don't think that's an opinion. I don't think that's an opinion, Jace. I think it's fact.
It's a fact. Yeah, so you're going to play Saka's always starting. Rice is always starting. Aaron Ramsdale should start, in my opinion. If you've then got Ben White and you've got Eddie, in my opinion, I mean, you're not going to... Obviously, displacing Kane is going to be difficult.
That's the bit I was going to raise, because I just can't see him getting much of a starting berth. In tournament, maybe in friendlies and other bits and pieces, you probably will.
But here's the question, and I'd genuinely be intrigued to hear your view, and I'm intrigued to hear many people's view on this, because I would like an Arsenal-tinted lens and a non-Arsenal tinted lens. But does Harry Kane in the England squad, in the way that we want to play, actually suit how... Like, because Southgate is tried to be... at the start, he tried to be, coming across as a bit of a disciple of the Guardiolas and that kind of stuff, and Klopp, and that kind of, at least that more modern football with England. And then I feel slowly that has tapered off in his years in management, because he always has to fit Kane in, because he always has to pick Maguire, because he always has to pick Pickford. And yeah, exactly. And therefore, what we thought was going to be a transformational England squad has slowly tapered off, in my opinion. And I'm like, you just need to, like, in my opinion, if I was the England manager, I'd be going, what kind of style of football do I want to play, and what are the best players to get them maximize the best of that? You'll see it, because my case in point, look how Spurs are playing now without Kane. Freedom, attacking football.
I mean, look how West
Exactly.
Ham are playing without Declan Rice. It's a similar kind of vein. Like, people always say you can't replace the man, but they replace them with different players. Like, and I
Yeah.
agree with you. I know what your point you're making. Southgate reverts the type a little bit for me. Like, he's a safe manager, a safe tactician, and he will revert to what he knows. And you're right, it's just not enough.
We're winning anything.
Dynamism. Yeah. That's the thing, we get quite far, and I think that's where there's a lot of faith in Southgate at the moment, or a lot of same with Arteta. You've built up a lot of rapport with getting as far as they've got in certain tournaments that you're allowing him to make the decisions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, congrats to Eddie. Like I say, it is a big milestone in his career. Here's hoping that he gets the chance to shine and does well.
Yeah, exactly that. Good luck, Eddie.
Just before we went into the podcast, they did the Ballon d'Or announcements.
I've seen this.
Martin Odegaard and Bukayo Saka are both in the running. I think, let's be honest, Erling Haaland's going to win it. I don't think there's any shadow of a doubt that he will win it because of the treble, because of his record-breaking goal-scoring season in the Premier League. It's just all written in the stars. But just to have those two names in that list amongst such great company is an achievement within itself. And I also think, I don't know what I think it's called the Yashin or something like that, the goalkeeper's version of the Ballon d'Or, of which Ramsdale is also in that.
Oh, that's good.
Which is surprising.
Well, he was in the Premier League or the PFA team of the season, wasn't he?
Isn't that player? That's player voted, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, it's great to see Saka and Odegaard in it. That's definitely well deserved. I think that is representative. Whom I sadden is not there. When I look at Kim Min-jae, I think he's a centre back, isn't he? He came from Napoli to PSG. I would say I'd like to see Saliba in there, maybe. But maybe it's just too soon. Maybe it's too soon. But I genuinely think we've got one of, and I think we did the ESPN review on ranking defence centre backs in the world. He's up there. I think he was number 4. I think he's up there. He didn't win anything, obviously, and he got injured in the last few months of the season. I think if we'd have won the league, he'd have probably been in that list from a centre back perspective.
Yep.
But I would maybe like to see him in there. Apart from that, I mean, the guys you expect to be are in there, and I look forward to seeing Bukayo Saka with the Ballon d'Or.
I mean, I can't say it like I say, but he's 22. He only just turned 22. It's still crazy to think he's got so much of a ceiling ahead of him. I just can't see it. Like, I don't know if you saw this. I think it was Paul Merson was on Sky Sports, and he basically said that Liverpool should sell Mohamed Salah for 200 million and then buy Bukayo Saka for 150. And I know I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was saying that effectively, I don't think Merson's on the payroll, right? He's not like a Ray Parlour where he gets wheeled out for the Arsenal paraphernalia, and as such will pull the threads of dissent when it comes to Arsenal. But that is absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I don't want to listen to it. It is just ridiculous.
It's
absolutely ridiculous.
It's the polite way of saying just ignore the guy. Basically, there's sometimes I don't understand some of Mercer's comments as someone who's meant to be a little bit of an ex-Arsenal legend, and he's not on the payroll. I don't understand some of his comments sometimes, so I just kind of let them go over my head. And that was one. I saw that, and I was just like, "What are you talking about, mate? That's absolute rubbish. We are not going to sell Bukayo Saka to Liverpool. And if we would, it'd be a world record transfer fee. Thinking you can sell Salah for 200 million to Saudi Arabia and then buy Saka for 150. No way. I mean,
changes the market, right? Sure.
Yeah, Salah goes for 200 million and Saka's younger, has got 8+ years till he's even 30. Like, he ain't going for 200 million and 150 million, mate. He's going for double whatever that is, like, based on the way the market's been changed. So, yeah, ignore that. One thing I wanted to talk about, actually, I didn't put it on our list for parking lot, but do you watch the Ivan Toney video on the YouTube video?
The CEO.
Yeah.
Stephen Bartlett. So I watched the first 15 minutes because I've seen the clip, obviously, where he calls out Arsenal in particular, which is obviously
he wants to come to Arsenal.
Sparkles in our eyes because he was probably the guy that we'd love to kind of get. Yeah, I've seen a bit of it. He's quite eloquent and it's quite a transparent kind of interview. He's quite open. I'm still quite flabbergasted by some of the things that he did and why he did them, but it's not really my place.
I think it's interesting. It's an interesting interview. I can't quite gauge the guy, but he's an amazing talent. And would I take him in January when he's available for transfer? Yes, 100%. And I think he wants to come to us as the genuine, because when he Stephen kept dropping the hints, right? Man United. He was not having any of that. He just didn't react to it. The whole.
I think he was a Liverpool fan, right? As a kid, is that what he said? And then
he said he was
a style of play is what interests him.
Basically, he was like, I'm a Liverpool fan, but Arsenal's the style of play that interests me, and basically was the biggest I want to play for Arsenal hint drop that could possibly be there. Makes me think even maybe the discussions that may need to be had have maybe already started from that perspective. What maybe why we didn't see an attacking purchase in the summer window in the same way why we didn't necessarily. We decided to only buy Jorginho in the last window because we knew Rice was coming, that kind of thing.
If Edu's already done his tapping up and getting the players sold on the project, half the work is done, and it'd be really interesting to see, because I think if we did get him in, we'd need to be removing one of Jesus or Nketiah.
I don't think so.
I just don't think we've got room for 3 strikers in that team.
I think we play one of them on the right. We need a backup for Saka. We keep saying it. So, I think we get them all in. I think you could put Jesus on the wing.
Jesus is the Thanos of the Arsenal world, just collecting strikers and sticking them in his gauntlet, ready to snap other teams out of existence.
Yeah, maybe.
Right, a big episode. We spent a lot of time in talking a fantastic 3-1 victory for the Arsenal. Jace, before we sign off, this is going up on YouTube. What do we want people to do?
We would like comments. We would like questions, and we'll answer them on the pod. And please give us a thumbs up if you like this.
And if you do. And if you're listening on your podcast provider of choice, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, what should they do on those?
Please give us a review. Please give us 5 stars, because Grev doesn't want anything less, and he'll come around your house if you do give us less.
Yeah, I'm not a scary individual, but just even the thought of me near your house should be enough to warrant a 5-star review.
It won't be scary. It'd be
nice.
Knock on my door. Hello, can you
up that 4 to a 5, please? Thanks. I might even bring treats. Right. 58 minutes done. Great podcast, Jace. Thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.